You know, pop culture, the movies, the music, those memes that go everywhere, we mostly think of it as like just entertainment, right? A way to switch off. But what if it's doing a lot more? What if it's actually this powerful engine for social change? Or maybe a battleground for what's true and, a kind of a complex mirror showing us our own society. Today, we're doing a deep dive into all that. We're looking at how popular culture mixes with activism, politics, even just well, how and why we consume stuff in this modern world. We've got a whole stack of different sources here for you. Everything from like serious academic looks at internet memes to industry reports about diversity in Hollywood, even some behind the scenes stuff from big fan conventions. So our mission today is really to pull out the key nuggets from all this. We want to help you understand the sometimes surprising ways pop culture shapes things, hopefully offering some, real insights and maybe even some actionable takeaways. Okay, let's kick things off. How do these huge public figures actually turn their fame into like real world impact?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And what's really compelling is that it's gone beyond just, lending a name to something. It's much more about actively using their platforms for real embedded change.
Right, like built into what they do.
Exactly. Take Miley Cyrus. She founded the Happy Hippie Foundation back in 2014. It focuses on supporting homeless and LGBTQ plus youth, and she weaves these themes of inclusivity right into her work, her whole public image.
Okay.
And Lady Gaga, she did something similar, right, with the Born This Way Foundation in 2012. That's all about empowering young people, promoting kindness. Plus, she's constantly advocating for LGBTQ plus rights, mental health, HIV/AIDS prevention. It's consistent.
Hmm. And Beyonce too, right? Her work is so full of it.
Oh, absolutely. She powerfully weaves activism into her music, her visuals. I mean, think about Lemonade or Black is King, celebrating Black culture, female empowerment, social justice. And her Bay Good initiative actively supports things like disaster relief and education. It's tangible.
And it's not just musicians either. I'm thinking of actors like Sophia Bush.
Good example. She co-founded I Am a Voter, that's about civic engagement. And she's really active, advocating for women's rights, environmental issues, gun violence prevention. You see her on social media at marches.
Yeah.
And America Ferrera, too. She's a dedicated activist for immigration reform, women's rights, Latinx representation.
She co-founded Harness, didn't she? To
Yeah.
link artists and activists.
That's right. And she was even appointed a UN Global Goodwill Ambassador just this past May.
Wow. So what ties them together, it seems, isn't just that they're famous. It's this like strategic move from just endorsing something to actively building it into their brand, their work.
Precisely. It shows that real impact now seems to demand that direct, often personal connection between the celebrity and the mission. Passive support isn't quite enough anymore.
Okay, so zooming out from individual celebrities,
Yeah.
what about memes? We often just laugh at them, right? But you're saying they're more significant.
Definitely. They might seem trivial, fleeting even, but they're actually turning out to be pretty profound guideposts for social movements. And Xiaomina's work is really insightful here. She defines memes not just as funny pictures, but as a piece of online media that is shared and remixed over time within the community.
Shared or remixed out.
Yeah, and that shared evolution is what makes them so powerful for social impact. They help rally support, mobilize activists really quickly, and they can get messages across different cultures and places because they use these recognizable ideas or icons.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about the "This is fine" dog, the one sitting in the burning room.
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of ironically adopted by the Women's March, or the NOH8 symbol, which came from the rainbow flag. These examples show how symbols can, as Mina puts it, fill a vital gap in guiding people who share the same values, even without explicit instructions.
That leads to something really interesting. How even fictional characters, fictional stories, can be sort of taken and reinterpreted to push real-world political messages.
Absolutely. A prime example is Marvel's Punisher.
Right, the anti-hero vigilante guy.
Exactly. He operates outside the justice system, very critical of it. But controversially, his symbol has been co-opted by some far-right groups, military units, even police forces.
Which is weird given the character's stance.
It is. And the creator, Jerry Conway, he actually said it's disturbing to see authority figures using that symbol. He compared it to putting a Confederate flag on a government building.
Wow. Has Marvel done anything?
They actually changed the character's logo recently, and there was a comic storyline where the Punisher directly confronts some cops using his symbol. He tells them, "We're not the same. You boys need a role model." His name's Captain America. "If I find out you're trying to do what I do, I'll come for you next."
Whoa. Direct.
Very direct. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How a character's meaning can be twisted or transformed in the public sphere, sometimes for political ends totally opposite to the original intent.
It really does.
And there's another fascinating example. Back in 2010, some Palestinian activists dressed up as the blue Na'vi characters from the movie Avatar.
From Avatar. Okay.
Yeah, they did this at the apartheid wall. They saw the film's message as anti-imperialist, anti-colonial. It just powerfully shows how a piece of media can hit differently depending on the culture, the context, the situation, sometimes in ways the creator never even imagined.
Hmm. Which kind of brings up this internal conflict maybe a lot of us feel. Like enjoying pop culture, but knowing it's created within this big capitalist system.
Right. And perhaps surprisingly, Karl Marx himself wasn't actually against consumption per se.
Really? I thought Marxism was all about critiquing capitalism's focus on goods.
Well, yes, but his critique was nuanced. He actually felt consumption was, in his words, underdeveloped under capitalism. The system, driven by profit, what he called capital accumulation, constantly expands our needs and desires, but then kind of paradoxically limits our ability to actually fulfill them because profit comes first.
That's not what I expected.
For Marx, personal consumption was a way for individuals to express themselves more freely. He contrasted accumulating capital with being, living, and consuming. He actually listed consuming goods and cultural products as ways people build themselves, fulfill themselves, things he argued capitalists cannot take away.
So it pushes back against that idea that we're all just mindless consumption zombies.
Exactly, while still acknowledging that, yes, commercial culture can be manipulative, absolutely. But it's not the whole story.
That's a great point. So what about this idea of voting with your dollar? We hear that all the time. Does it actually work for big systemic change? Or is it more just about, feeling better individually?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Huh.
The concept of ethical consumption as purely an individual choice voting with our dollar is often described as a neoliberal idea, meaning it puts the burden of fixing systemic problems onto individual shoppers rather than pushing for bigger changes in government policy or corporate behavior. It solves a personal moral dilemma, maybe, but doesn't necessarily change the system itself.
But what about boycotts? Can they work?
Yes. Our sources do draw a distinction there. Strategic, organized mass boycotts, driven by a large, coordinated movement. Those can be effective tools.
Like the BDS movement for Palestine.
That's often cited as an example, yes. And there's a more current example potentially on the horizon. A group called the People's Union USA has called for month-long boycotts starting July 1st, 2025.
Yes, who?
Amazon, Starbucks, and Home Depot.
Okay, why them?
Well, the reasons cited are pretty specific. For Amazon, it's accusations about worker conditions, extreme heat, low wages, contrasted with reports about Jeff Bezos's very lavish wedding.
Right.
And the boycott call extends to companies linked to Amazon, like Zappos, Whole Foods, Twitch, Audible. Though Amazon did put out a statement in September 2024 saying average wages had increased.
What about Starbucks and Home Depot?
Starbucks is accused of firing workers who were trying to unionize and shutting down unionizing stores, claims their former CEO denied back in March 2023. And Home Depot got called out for quietly removing its diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI page from its website.
What did Home Depot say?
They now say their Where THD page focuses on company culture, wages, benefits, and affirms a culture that welcomes everyone. So it's a complex situation with claims and counterclaims all around.
It definitely sounds like it. Which leads to another tricky area. This paradox of genuinely enjoying something, some piece of pop culture, even when you know there are problematic things about how it was made or who made it.
Oh, absolutely. That saying all your faves are problematic, it perfectly captures that feeling, right? That sort of internal conflict, maybe even guilt, about consuming and enjoying capitalist cultural products when you're aware of the harm maybe involved in their creation.
Yeah, I feel that.
Think about the show Will and Grace. It was huge, right?
Yeah.
Widely seen as advancing gay culture, educating people.
Yeah.
But it also got criticism. Some called it a queer minstrel show, arguing it reinforced harmful stereotypes.
Right, I remember some of that critique.
Yet one source mentions a queer comrade who acknowledged those flaws but said, watching it at 14 would have made them feel less lonely. And the takeaway presented is quite powerful. You don't necessarily have to politically defend your emotional response or your enjoyment. Your personal connection can be real and valid, even if the art itself isn't perfect or uncontroversial.
That tension between just enjoying something and thinking about its ethics really shows how personal pop culture is. But what happens when that personal connection is deliberately manipulated? Not just by capitalism, but by new tech trying to shape our politics.
Yeah, and that connects to another big example, Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling.
Ah, yes. The boycotts around the Hogwarts Legacy game because of her views on trans people.
Exactly. But one source we looked at makes a counter-argument. It says focusing just on boycotting that one game because of Rowling kind of misses a bigger systemic picture,
Yeah.
which is that all video games, arguably, are created through exploitative conditions. Taxing schedules for developers, wage theft issues, discrimination, even alleged slave labor involved in making the consoles themselves.
Oof, that's a heavy point.
It is. So the argument goes, not buying one game is an individual choice. It denies you personal pleasure, perhaps, but it doesn't really fight that deeper systemic problem of exploitation across the whole industry.
Right. It shifts the focus. Okay, so that brings us to another really interesting, maybe slightly scary twist. How technology, specifically AI, is messing with the lines between what's funny and what's actually deception, especially in politics.
Yes, putting this into the bigger picture, AI-generated memes are basically a new frontier for disinformation, and they're tricky because they're designed to influence us without setting off the usual alarm bells.
How so?
Well, commercial AI tools like X's chatbot Grok can churn out memes incredibly fast. They can even use famous people's likenesses, copyrighted stuff, sometimes even violent content.
And people just shared them.
Often, yes. They get dropped into political conversations, and because they look like harmless jokes, especially if shared by someone you trust, they slide under the radar. Policymakers are finding it really hard to gauge their impact because they look so innocuous or humorous.
That's like weaponized humor.
In a way. And there are legal complications, too. There's pending legislation like the Deepfakes Accountability Act, but it often has carve-outs for memes, humor, satire, parody, framing it as freedom of expression.
So it's hard to draw the line between a parody and actual deception meant to mislead.
Exactly. And then you have Section 230, which generally protects online platforms from liability for what users post. So holding platforms accountable for meme-based disinformation is really difficult.
And we saw this playing out in the recent U.S. election, right?
Absolutely. Both sides were using AI-generated memes. Trump allies shared AI images making him look good, or mocking opponents like that fake image of Kamala Harris at a communist rally, or even fake pics of Taylor Swift fans endorsing Trump.
I think I saw some of those.
There was also a supposed parody video of Harris calling herself a deep state puppet. But then the Harris campaign was also accused of falsely captioning AI-generated videos to make Trump look lost and confused.
So both sides are doing it.
It seems so. Even those viral AI cat memes about Trump's conspiracy theory involving Haitian immigrants and pets, those were apparently shared by people across the political spectrum.
Wow. Okay. What does the data say about this stuff?
Well, data from Red Fame Publishing looked at political memes and found that the ones containing misinformation generated the most negative sentiment, about 45%. Users were often actually debunking the claims in the comments.
That's slightly encouraging.
Maybe. But the study also found that these memes mostly spread within ideologically similar groups like the #Magie community on X. So they're reinforcing echo chambers and making polarization worse.
So what's the solution?
It really highlights this urgent need for better public AI literacy. People need to understand how this stuff is made and how it can be used. And maybe Congress needs to rethink those legal carve-outs for memes, especially when they involve copyrighted images or clear disinformation.
Okay, switching gears a bit, but still related to industry structures. What about Hollywood? How are they dealing with the push for more diversity, especially now with all the legal challenges around DEI?
That's a huge topic right now. Diversity in film, both in front of and behind the camera, is definitely getting more attention. You see things like the Academy Awards mandating diversity requirements for Best Picture eligibility starting in 2024.
But GEI programs are facing legal headwinds, aren't they?
They are. The legal landscape is complex. Recent Supreme Court rulings have shown, let's say, hostility towards programs that explicitly use protected characteristics like race or sex to grant concrete benefits like hiring or promotion.
So you can't just say, we need to hire someone from this group.
Legally, that's becoming very risky. The focus really needs to shift towards expanding the pool of candidates, making sure opportunities are open to everyone, rather than picking someone just to check a box.
And Hollywood has its own particular challenges there.
Right. Definitely. A major barrier is how insular the industry can be. So much hiring is based on relationships, on who you know, and if those networks are already fairly homogenous, it just perpetuates the disparities.
But how can companies promote diversity legally and effectively then?
Well, the advice is to focus on structural reforms. Things like being more transparent with job postings, posting them widely, not just relying on word of mouth.
Makes sense.
Building real relationships with diverse affinity groups and institutions. The sources mention groups like the Black House Foundation or the Sundance Institute's Native American and Indigenous program. Using structured interview processes so everyone gets asked the same core questions.
Less room for bias that way.
Hopefully. Also, conducting anti-bias training, making DEI competency part of how leaders are evaluated, creating mentorship programs, setting up employee resource groups, or ERGs.
So it's about opening doors and removing barriers
Yeah.
systemically rather than focusing on specific outcomes for specific groups.
Exactly. The goal is expanding access and opportunity, breaking down those old barriers, not just tokenism.
Okay, so the industry is grappling with this.
Yeah.
But what about the fans? Especially, say, women fans who are passionate about this stuff but might feel sidelined in these big pop culture spaces. How are they making their voices heard?
That's a great question, and it brings us to events like Comic-Con. San Diego Comic-Con 2025 is coming up July 24th to 27th.
Still huge, right? Even if some big studios aren't there this year.
Oh yeah, still massive. Over 135,000 people expected. Apparently George Lucas is even making his first ever appearance.
Wow.
But what's really relevant here is a specific panel happening on Saturday, July 26th at the San Diego Central Library. It's called Fangirling in the Face of Barriers.
Okay, tell me more.
This panel is set to directly tackle the challenges that Femme Voices women and female-identifying fans and creators face in pop culture, in the workplace, in decision-making roles, on social media, everywhere.
Who's on the panel?
It includes people like Jenna Wren from Portrait of a Fangirl, Bobby from Culture Kitsch, Movie Mija, Fantastic Frankie, Shiv Reddy, Victoria Mail.
A real range of voices. What will they discuss?
They'll be talking about challenging stereotypes, pushing for more diverse narratives within fandom itself, how to handle negativity online and find strength in it, and really how to empower the next generation of women leaders in pop culture. It's about claiming space and agency.
That sounds incredibly important. It connects back to how culture gets shaped, not just from the top down, but from the audience up.
Precisely. And speaking of reshaping beloved culture, let's look at Wicked. The upcoming films are a fascinating case study in adapting something popular and how that reflects broader cultural shifts.
Right, the sequel, Wicked, for Good, is coming out November 21st, 2025, adapting the second act of the stage show.
Correct. And there are some really significant changes from the musical that kind of signal how adaptations are evolving.
Like what?
Well, for starters, there are two brand new songs written just for the film. One for Elphaba, which was apparently co-written with Cynthia Erivo herself.
Oh, interesting. A collaboration.
Yeah, it shows that star involvement. And another for Glinda. But maybe more dramatically, the trailer shows Glinda and Fiyero actually getting married.
Wait, married? In the musical, they only get engaged, right?
Exactly. So that's a major departure. It could really change the dynamic of the love triangle. Or, maybe it's a dream sequence or something. The trailer also shows animals wrecking the wedding. But it's a bold choice, showing how adaptations aren't afraid to reinterpret core elements now.
Any other big changes?
Dorothy Gale, from Kansas, apparently has a bigger role than she does in the stage show's second act.
Okay.
And maybe most significantly, there seems to be a real focus on preventing ableism. The whole sequence with Nessarose, the Wicked Witch of the East, she's played by Marissa Bode, who uses a wheelchair in real life.
Right. And reports say that sequence will be presented differently, specifically to avoid depicting ableism. That's a huge sign of how existing stories are being actively re-examined through a modern, more inclusive lens during adaptation.
That is a big deal. What about the production itself? Anything notable there?
Quite a bit. They split the story into two films, arguing it allows for more depth, more character development, which also fits that trend of turning big properties into multi-part events.
Right. Maximize the franchise.
Pretty much. And apparently the lead actresses insisted on recording their vocals live on set. That's pretty rare for big movie musicals these days, a real commitment to authenticity.
Impressive.
The director, John M. Chu, talked about being inspired by films like Hook for wanting large-scale practical sets. They apparently planted 9 million tulips for Munchkin Land.
Ah.
And built a real yellow brick road, trying to give it that tangible feel.
Wow.
And thematically, he mentioned influences like Pleasantville and The Truman Show, wanting to portray Oz as a place of awakening. That suggests maybe a layer of social commentary, too. And the marketing for this second part, It's been huge, right?
Absolutely massive. The trailer dropped online in June 2025 after debuting at CinemaCon, and it got something like 113 million views in just 24 hours. That's even more than the first film's trailer.
That's incredible reach.
And there's more coming. A big TV special on NBC in November, a Lego Masters episode themed around the movie.
They're going all out.
Totally. And there's already talk about expanding the Wicked film universe even further beyond these two movies. Plus, theme park attractions are apparently in development for Universal Parks.
So it's not just a movie, it's becoming this whole cultural ecosystem.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how a hugely successful piece of pop culture can generate its own massive economy and cultural footprint.
So, wrapping things up, it's clear pop culture isn't just one thing, is it? It's this incredibly vibrant, complex, often really contradictory force in our lives.
Absolutely. It's where we find joy, escape, but it's also clearly a tool for social change, a battleground for information and truth, and yeah, that deep reflection of who we are, what we hope for, what we struggle with.
So maybe the next time you're watching a movie, listening to music, or sharing that viral meme, it's worth taking a second.
Definitely. Ask yourself, what messages are really being pushed here? Whose voices are maybe getting heard for the first time? And how does your own engagement with all this stuff, how you consume it and react to it, how might that actually be contributing to shaping the world around you, hopefully towards something more informed, maybe even more just? Something to think about.